Hi, welcome everyone. So I'm gonna jump into it straight and just continue where I left off. And then so they agreed to feed her with 5 milliliters of milk every 3 hours. Thank God. I mean, when she got 5 milliliters of milk, she was still like hungry because at that point her full feed would have been more than 30 meals. But that's what she was getting, and it was better than nothing, right? And then waiting for 7 days. So I felt a little bit more like I finally managed to help that baby. And then the next day, she was, obviously, back to completely normal, but she was just still hungry because she was getting milk, but they were increasing it by 2 milliliters every 3 hours. But they did say that on the 16th, the next day, I can finally breastfeed her as well. But I didn't have much milk. I was stuck at that 30 mils on the one breast, 15 mils on the other breast, and that's all I had. I'm like, even if she tries for hours, the only thing she would get out is max 40 mils is her max that she could get out of there. So, and that was close to her maximum feed at that point. Anyway, so on the 16th, which was 6 days in, so this was 6 days after the incident, I could breastfeed her, which was amazing, and she was so happy. I was so happy. That was the most amazing moment after all these days, because I couldn't even hold her for 6 days. She was just so upset. So finally I could breastfeed her and she fell asleep in my arms, and I was just so happy. By the night she took in 30 mils of breast milk through breastfeeding, and actually she was up at 1886 grams at that point, so she was getting close to the 2 kilos. We bought her a little dress, preterm dress at that point, because we were told to buy her, because she was, again, we were getting to the point when they were like, okay, now when she gets back to full feed, then you guys can probably finally take her home. So we bought her the dress, which was a preterm dress, and even the preterm dress was huge on her. And she also had 2 preterm full-length bodysuits, and those were huge on her as well. But she looked super cute in clothing. Those they couldn't put on her right now because she was still getting IV until she gets on her full feed. She was still getting IV, so she was still hooked up to the IV machine, so she was on antibiotics for 7 days, so she had to be on the IV for 7 days no matter what. So she had to wear just a dress so the IV could go underneath it. Anyways, says that's like this nurse that I talked to that one day, I'd never even seen her before, and even she said that she was just sick from the MCT oil, and that happened to other kids before, but I talked to lots of other nurses and they all agreed to me. I wish that the nurses had more impact or more saying in what happens to a baby, but if a nurse actually, I noticed that if I tell a nurse that, hey, tell the doctor that, look at her tummy, like, that is crazy, the nurse doesn't necessarily raises that issue with the doctor, because it looks like they're not supposed to. Like, they are only supposed to raise up an issue if it's a huge issue. There's an issue with the whole system here. Like, it's crazy. Like, the nurse is the one nurses are the ones that kind of see her every day beside me. Even though she gets different nurses, they measure her tummy every single time that feeding, and they see that it's getting big and big and big, and they should have the power to actually just go to the doctor and say that. And there were nurses who'd done that, but there were nurses who didn't say it because they were scared to, which is, in my mind, crazy. I don't know what's going on there. Don't even want to know because I would just get even more angry. Okay, so on the 17th, this is, she would be almost 2 months, like 2 days before she turned 2 months or spent 2 months in the hospital. So she was actually 137 grams that day, so almost 2 kilos. Say that we are back to breastfeeding her. She's not on her full feed yet. This is on the 17th. So they started to feed her on the 14th. Okay, so basically what's happening here is that so they were increasing her milk 2 milliliters every 3 hours. I don't know what their full feed was at that point, but it was more than 30 ml, so it was more than what I was actually able to give her through breastfeeding. So what happened is that they started to feed her on the 15th, on the 14th at night, like in midnight almost, so let's just say from the 15th, and then they went and then she reached up to her full feed by the 17th time. So in 3 days they increased her up to actually at that point they increased her up to 30 mils, which was not her full feed yet, but that was what she was getting before. That was her max that she wanted to get before she got sick. She got my necklace. I think she broke it and it's completely garbage, but what do you expect from these high quality Chinese necklaces? Anyways, from starving her for 4 days, completely starving her, to going back to her full feed was altogether 4 days. So they, and by full feed I mean she was up to 40, close to 40 meals, and I mean, yeah, she never breastfed 40 at that point. Like she wanted to breastfeed. When you let her breastfeed, she breastfed 30, and she could have breastfed 40 because that was, I didn't have much more milk than that, but 40, she still could have breastfed 40 if she wanted to, but she didn't want to. But they were still giving her 40 through her feeding tube. They started for 4 days, and they were first slowly increasing her feed with 2 milliliters every 3 hours, but then they started to increase it faster and faster, and she was, in 2 days, she was back to 30 meals, which is the feed that she was taking in beforehand. And I want to point this out because I mean, can you imagine when you completely starve the baby for 4 days, or anyone, it doesn't have to be a baby, anyone, and then in 2 days you go back to eating completely what you were eating before, no additives, but I mean the volume. And I do think that was just extremely stupid. Again, the nurses agreed with me as well. Again, later the doctors agreed with me as well. At this point, we are not really thinking of anything. I'm just saying like, OMG, like she's back to 30 in 2 days. Like, isn't that a little bit, too fast? But I'm not a doctor, so I didn't really say much. And so by the 18th, which is 2 days later, she's up at like 40 something, which is her full feeds. I think it was too much for her right there, right at that moment, going from 0 to 40 in the 4 days. But at least they didn't add anything to the breast milk yet, and I thought that they finally got the idea and they won't, but they did want to. We will get there in a second. So at this point we are really hoping to take her home, like especially what happened, because we're like, don't want that to happen again, like we were just like, let's get her out of this, because she's not doing well in the hospital. She would be doing 100 times better at home. Like we knew at that point, like she didn't need anything from them. She could do her feeding. I didn't produce enough milk for her, so obviously I would have to give her formula. And I did tell them that to the nurses, and I said that you guys can start giving her bottle, and please. And I told them that please start giving her food through her bottle instead of the the tube. And you know, like if she doesn't drink the whole feed through the bottle, then obviously give her the rest through her tube, because I have to bottle feed her later on anyways. Like she's gonna be breastfeeding and bottle feeding, and because I just want to take her home as soon as possible, I want you guys to do the bottle, because you know, like they don't want to introduce the bottle to the baby because they want you to breastfeed her. But at this point, I knew that she will have to get formula added because I just don't have enough milk for her. And my plan was to breastfeed her and bottle feed her, but I told her not to give her the feed through bottles. That's the point. And they agreed with me, and they were starting doing that. So we had everything to take her home at that point. But issues started to arise with specific nurses that didn't like my schedule was there on the table saying that I come in and breastfeed her at 12 and at 8 p.m. and then at 12. Well, I think, no, sorry, I was just breastfeeding her twice. I was breastfeeding her twice a day only at that point, because they said to just breastfeed her